Okay, great. So, hello everyone, and welcome to Fresh Start, a webinar to raise awareness among Queen Margaret University students and raise funds to tackle homelessness in Scotland. And we have speakers from 4 local homelessness charities with us today, and we've got Ewan Aitken, the Chief Executive at Cyrenians, and we've got Liam Kirkcaldy, Communications Officer at Crisis, Georgia Ramplin, Community Fundraiser at Shelter Scotland, and Cindy Cosgrove, Community and Youth Fundraising Manager at Social Bite. Our speakers have kindly agreed to tell us more about homelessness in Scotland, how this relates to the student population in a time when rent prices in Edinburgh seem to be skyrocketing. They will also talk about their own work, the charity's work, how and where to seek help if and when needed, and share ways in which you can get involved in the charities yourselves with fundraising, volunteering, and things like that. We will be posting our Just Giving link in the chat during the stream, so do consider donating. These charities are doing an amazing job for the people in enviable circumstances in our community, so it would be great of you to help us out in that sense. After the so-called official part of this event, we will be holding a Q&A where our chat moderators will be passing on questions to me so I can ask our speakers so they can answer them at the end of the talk. So without further ado, I would like to invite Ewan Aitken from Cyrenians to take the mic. Cyrenians is a homelessness charity meeting people where they are and supporting them towards where they want to be.
Thanks, Annie, and it's great to be here. And thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to have a conversation about something that's very, very close to my heart, obviously, but actually, I think also interestingly close to a lot of other people's hearts as well over recent times. Some of you at QMU may have heard of us because, in fact, we run a pantry and cook club and cooking classes out at the on the campus there, which is great, and we really love doing it. But you might say, oh, why is a homelessness charity working with students? But actually, the point that you're making, Annie, is the kind of fragility that some of you guys experience is the same kind of fragility that means that some people end up homeless. That point of poverty, or that point of not getting the support that you need, that means that you're not able to make the decisions that take you away from rather than into a place of crisis. And that whole philosophy of trying to get to where people are before the crisis happens is fundamental to who we are as Cyrenians. We, of course, do all the stuff that people do in other areas of support for people with who are homeless. We do outreach teams. We support Housing First. That's a housing program for people who with multiple and complex needs who've struggled to hold a tenancy beforehand. We have a hospital inreach team. We work with people who end up in hospital who are homeless, and we support them and get them into a better place so they're more likely to recover. And a whole number of other crisis-based stuff that you would kind of expect. But actually, fundamental to what we're doing is prevention. Now, during COVID, of course, we had to change what we did, and we collaborate, as we always do, with lots of other organisations. We're part of the team that put folk who are sleeping into hotels during the first lockdown. We had 700 people in those hotels, which was just extraordinary. In fact, nobody got COVID in all those hotels in that time, which is a phenomenal achievement. But what we also did was we learned from that. And the collectively, organisations, not just Cyrenians, said to the council, actually, this hotel thing works. It works because we're able to be here 24 hours. It works because people know where their dinner's coming from. It works because we can provide the resources, bring them to people rather than people having to find all the different appointments. And actually, we get a better engagement. We can build relationships, which is fundamental to what we do. And so the council have learned that lesson. And now, instead of a night shelter, they block book a hotel. And that's one of the really interesting things that's come out of COVID that says we're changing what we do in homelessness because of the lessons we've learned. The demands are still, though, really high. I was hearing just recently, that hotel is full. They're seeing about 40 people a week new who've never engaged with homelessness services previously. It's been open October and it'll run till May. And there will be 1,000 individuals who otherwise would have slept rough, who will use that service in that period of time. That's the kind of pressure we're under, and it's getting worse. And that's why we need to not just be talking about how can we manage crisis better, but actually, how can we get upstream so the crisis doesn't happen in the first place. And at the heart of what we do in Cyrenians is that preventative work further upstream, like having cook clubs and pantries we've got about 18 at the moment across Edinburgh and the Lothians. We know that the biggest driver to homelessness is poverty, more than anything else. And actually, if you grow up or are experiencing poverty and you're single, and actually tragically you're male, and you're between the ages of 20 and 45, and you've had challenges with education, that's the group is most likely to end up homeless more than anybody else. There are lots of reasons how people end up homeless, however, and I wouldn't want to give the impression that that's the only group. People end up homeless because of family breakup. It's the reason that most young people give when they present as homeless, and about 4,000 people a year, young people a year, present as homeless. So one of the things that we do is we work with families. We have a mediation service, and in fact, some of your students from QMU have come to work for us because they've done the course, the mediation course that you have. And that's one of the ways in which you can think about what you do. What are the skills I could take into this space that might not be obvious? I'm maybe not good at being a care, doing frontline care, but I could do mediation. Well, there's a place for you there if that's your course. We work with families to help them have the conversation they're struggling to have so the young person can stay at home. And it's very successful because what we don't fix people. That's not what we do at all. We create a space for people to do the things for themselves, and that's why it works. And I remember one father telling me that his 16-year-old daughter had come back and was living at home following a mediation. And I said, what was it that made the difference? And he said, you created a space where I reminded myself why I love my daughter. Now, that's an extraordinary thing for him to say, and it's a reminder of what's fundamental to the solutions around homelessness. It is human relationships. It's feeling like loved, and that you can love and your love is received, and that you have the resources and the tools to make decisions that allow you to flourish. One of the other groups we work with in mediation is around veterans, because we know that veterans are highly likely to end up homeless because of their experiences. And we work with the families to be a support for them rather than become some people who end up getting hurt by experience. We recently had 43 veterans families out on our farm. We run a farm in West Lothian where we have a group of young homeless people live on the farm. And they were out there using that outdoor space, supporting each other, getting to know each other, and create a community that means that they have a sense they're not on their own. They belong to something that's greater, and together they can find the solutions. So family breakup was one of the big issues. One of the other issues is that business about education and that challenge education. So we support young people who are struggling at school or school refuses. We supported about 140 young people last year into college or into jobs. And again, we don't sort that out for them. They sort it out for themselves. We just create the space for that to happen, because people have in themselves the capacity to bring about the change they require. They just need the opportunity to discover it and make it work. And that's what's sustainable. Too many services, particularly statutory services, about fixing folk and telling them what's wrong and they'll fix it. Our attitude is, who are you? What matters to you? And how can we go on a journey with you so you can get that thing that you're really passionate about or ambitious for, or would help you make the change that you need to make? Because if we take that view, then extraordinary things can happen. I heard of a group of young folk that we were supporting at school from a teacher who said, the support you've given this group of 4 boys has turned them from guys who were always causing trouble to a wee band of brothers who are supporting each other into college. And I actually said to their teachers, can you help us with this? The teachers have noticed the difference, their families have noticed the difference, and their communities know the difference. The benefit isn't just to the individual, but the whole place. And everybody benefits when we support people in tough realities on their terms to their definition of success. One of the other challenges is mental health, and that has been a huge issue in COVID, as we know. So we run community gardens in hospitals where people with mental health challenges, they come out, spend time in the garden, use that business of nature to discover the kind of fundamentals of life. And actually, we've been able to evidence that patients challenged by mental health issues who spend time in the garden end up spending less time in hospital. We're not clinicians, we're not trying to fix folk, but we create a space where they can be in charge of their own future and their own healing. And they then go into the community, live in the community, but use being part of that community as a way of maintaining their tenancies. We also know that people in the criminal justice system are more likely to become homeless. If you're in the criminal justice system, you'll experience that you're 13 times less likely to get a job. So we support people who are doing community payback, but we also support them back into work, helping them. Fundamentally, the issue is how can they tell the story of that bit of their lives that everybody has great stigma about? So we help them tell that story in that process of getting into work. So they're in charge of it rather than somebody discovered, or it's in a tick box in a form. They say, well, can't employ them, they're a criminal or an ex-criminal or whatever. They don't need to be that. They need to be who they are. They need to be able to accept the thing that they did that wasn't clever or they did wrong. But that shouldn't hold them back from flourishing. So we create a space for that sort of stuff to happen. And we also run 2 recovery services, because addiction is one of the great issues that is around. But everything we do is about relationships, about asking that fundamental "who are you" question, and then saying what is the journey we can take with you to make that difference. At the heart of poverty, of course, is how can we create spaces where people can get the support they need without stigma. So one of the things we do is we run Fair Share, which is we redistribute surplus supermarket food, and we're always looking for volunteers for that. So if folk want to volunteer around it, we have that, because we shift 100 tons of food a month that would otherwise go to landfill. It's not short dated or anything. It's all good quality food, but the system, the supermarket system, hasn't been able to make sense of it. It's gone to the wrong shop, or it's got a spelling mistake. We had a bunch of cereal in one day, and I said, what's wrong with that? I said, there's a spelling mistake in the Arab translation, so they couldn't sell it. Bonker stuff, but that's what happens. So we partner with 170 organizations, some of them are here, Social Bite has been one of them in particular, and they get that food at a much reduced price, which means their money goes further, and this food is used that would otherwise have gone to landfill. So that's a good thing in itself. And more people can get access to the food they need with dignity. Because that's the thing about the pantries, about the cook clubs, and about the other things that we do around food. It creates a space where we do that fundamental human thing of eating together. And in that, we create relationships that allow us, that we wouldn't have had otherwise, that allow us to get the things that we need. I remember we had one cook club up in Morden, and there was a person there, a mother there who'd lost, she had a single parent, and she lost her only child. She was absolutely devastated, traumatized by the whole thing. But her pal persuaded her to come to the cook club. But the first time she came, she just shoved stuff around and wouldn't eat it. The second time she came, she sat on her own in the corner, but ate a little bit more. Third time, her pal did come. She came on her own, still didn't engage. By the 6th week, she was saying, how's the meals made? Volunteers. Would you like to join? Sure. After 2 months, she was in the kitchen cooking. Now, if I'd said to her, I think you should come and cook, she'd have told me to take a hike. But you created a space where she could build the relationships on her terms to create an opportunity for her to get out of that tough reality that was going to create a level of socialization that meant she was highly likely to lose her tenancy in the end, to a space where she's in charge of her future. We run 5 communities, including we have the privilege of partnering with Social Bite to run the village there. And all of that is about creating communities where people on their terms look after each other, and in looking after each other, they're to look after themselves. And those communities include people with mental health challenges, young folk, the village, and a group of unaccompanied minors who are amongst the most excluded. These are young people who have been trafficked, and they're amongst the most excluded. In the end, however, everything we do isn't, as I've said already, but it's so important to emphasize, fixing folk or solving folks' problems for themselves. It's create the space for them to do the thing we all want to do, be in charge of our own destiny. And if we can do that, then the huge issues that continue to be around about homelessness in Scotland can be dealt with. It's intensive. It takes time and money and effort and commitment, but the results are literally life-changing. And that's why I say to people, I'm in the best job I've ever had. And I'm really privileged to be in it. There are lots of ways in which you can support, and I'd be delighted to talk more with you about doing that, whether it's raising money, whether it's volunteering, whether it's thinking about a career in it. All those are real possibilities. And thank you, and well done for putting this on. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Ewan. Yeah, thank you to Ewan for joining us today. And also, I'd like to point out that he's absolutely right about them being excited to work with students and volunteers and other people, because when we sent out emails to all the charities that we wanted to involve, they were so responsive. Well, actually, all the charities that were here were so responsive. So it's honestly an email away. You can help someone, and also follow them on all their social medias. And they're quite active on Instagram, as we've seen from our side. And yeah, check out their website and to involve yourself in the charity. And I'd also like to remind you guys who are watching that we do have a Just Giving link if you want to donate. We will be splitting the proceeds between the charities. So yeah. Okay. Next up, I will hand it over to Liam Kirkcaldy from Crisis. Crisis is a charity providing people with vital help to rebuild their lives so they are supported out of homelessness for good.
Hello, everyone. I'm Liam Kirkcaldy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me along to speak. It's a real privilege to join you all, and it's also great to be joined by so many other excellent organisations. I mean, you've done a brilliant job of choosing this panel. We work with all of the organisations here in some way or another. I was actually talking to one of our coaches yesterday who has just had a member, one of the people we work with, whose homelessness has now been ended. They had started off working with Social Bite. Social Bite had provided accommodation. We'd provided some support on the financial side of things, accessing welfare and things like that. And now she's running her own business. She's the member involved has ended her homelessness. She's got a flat, and things are looking much better now. Cyrenians lent us their kitchen over Christmas to help prepare food. We work with them on the prevention work that you mentioned as well, and we also campaign alongside Shelter on a lot of the big issues that can help end homelessness in Scotland, particularly their work in encouraging politicians to commit to building more affordable housing, which is a really important thing to do in our journey towards ending homelessness. So, if it's okay, I thought I would start off by telling you a little bit about Crisis, in case you're not totally aware of what we do, a little bit about homelessness in Scotland, and particularly about the impact of the pandemic on homelessness, because to be honest, it changed absolutely everything for us, not just in the way that we operate services, but also just in the state of homelessness. So the first thing to say is that Crisis was founded in the late 60s as an urgent housing protest. We didn't plan to still exist at this point. And the fact that Crisis does still exist is a sign of failure. It's a sign that homelessness still exists in Scotland. It still exists in the UK. And I think if I can make one point at all while I speak to you today, it's that homelessness is not inevitable. Homelessness is something that we can end in Scotland with the right political will, by working together, and with the right resources. We can end homelessness and we can sign it to history. So the question is how you do that, obviously. Now, we started off, as I say, as a protest. Beyond that, we started providing support to people around Christmas. Christmas is a particularly difficult time for people experiencing homelessness. It's a time when a lot of people think about what they have, about what they don't have, when they think about community, about family, about friends. And that means that for all those reasons, if someone's experiencing homelessness, Christmas can be a particularly hard time for them. So we started providing support around Christmas. But then beyond that, we started providing year-round support for people either experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. So we started operating what we call skylight centres. There are 11 of those now across the UK, one in Edinburgh, which is based just near the Scottish Parliament. Now, those are kind of like bases for frontline support. Those are places that you can go if you need urgent housing advice, housing support from what we call progression coaches, housing coaches. They can provide welfare support, things like that. But we also provide learning as well. We help people with qualifications. We help people with languages. Some of the people that we support in Edinburgh are not literate in any language at all. So it's not just that they don't speak English. That can obviously make providing support particularly challenging. There are people that, because of their immigration status, can't access the welfare system. So one of the big bits of work that we do in the Edinburgh Skylight is to help people get into work. That then allows you to access the rest of the housing system. Beyond that, we do other work from the ground up. So that's the kind of frontline side of things. We also have a research team that provide analysis of homelessness across Scotland and across the UK. We operate in England and Wales as well. We have a policy team, which provides ideas on how we can end homelessness. And finally, this is where I come in. We work with politicians, with the media, and most importantly, with our supporters to campaign for the changes that we need to see to end homelessness altogether. So, as I said, the pandemic really did change the way that we operated in a huge way. It changed all of our lives, of course, but for people experiencing homelessness, the change was probably particularly drastic. Our Christmas support had to move to a hybrid model. Obviously, we could no longer just meet people in person as we would have previously. A couple of years ago, what we would have done would be open a drop-in centre in Edinburgh. People could turn up if they needed support. Even if they were just alone, they could turn up. You could get food, drinks, entertainment. We had podiatrists to help check on people's feet. A lot of people experiencing homelessness can often have problems with their feet. We had hairdressers, so you could get your hair done, you could get your nails done, and there were also housing coaches on hand. So if you did have a question about how you could access housing support or access your rights, then you could get it directly straight on the day. Unfortunately, COVID obviously made that quite difficult. We had to employ social distancing. We couldn't have a huge number of people all together in a building. So we moved to a hybrid approach, which meant some things were done remotely with wellbeing calls, some bits done over Zoom. We delivered food to over 300 people around Edinburgh and Lothians. Cyrenians really, really helped us with that. So it's kind of like a bit like a kind of Deliveroo service. You'd get a 3-course meal sent to you. On Boxing Day, that was steak pie, or a vegetarian option. But it changed, the pandemic changed the way that we operate. It also just changed the nature of homelessness in Scotland. Anecdotal evidence suggests that students saw spikes in rent. Their housing was obviously disrupted with the changes to their courses, and there's a general shortage of housing, which will generally drive an increase in homelessness. We heard reports of students sleeping in hostels, of sofa surfing. That led the NUS to call for a national strategy to address this. But it did change things far more widely than just that. In March 2020, we saw the arrival of COVID. Now, our immediate priority as a homelessness organisation was to make sure that people were supported to get off the streets and into safe, self-contained accommodation to allow people to socially distance and to keep them safe. Now, there were 2 big advantages to that. There's no doubt it saved lives. Moving people off the streets saved people's lives, partly from COVID and partly from the cold. The winter we saw, not this one, but the one before, was one of the coldest in years. And that urgent action it's really difficult to overstate just how radical that move was. It was something that people had previously thought impossible. Organisations like the Simon Community, which are an excellent frontline organisation as well as the ones we have here today, Streetwork, they utilise decades of their own experience to reduce the numbers of people sleeping rough in Scotland. And then they managed to keep them low as the pandemic continued. So we have information on rough sleeping from before March 2020, which suggests that around 1,500 people were sleeping out the night before they accessed support. During the pandemic, after that move from March onwards, we were hearing numbers of rough sleepers in Scotland so low compared to before. We're talking about less than 20 people on some nights. So that decision to move people indoors and to make sure they got urgent support, and then in the model that Ewan's already talked you through, that fundamentally changed homelessness in Scotland. Previously, we thought it was impossible. We essentially ended rough sleeping in Scotland, or nearly ended rough sleeping, in a matter of weeks. It saved lives, but it did something else. It showed us what we can do with the right political will, that by working together, national government, local government, homelessness services, and the organisations you have here today, they showed what can be done. But there was a consequence to this. Now, rough sleeping numbers were reduced. However, the number of people trapped in temporary accommodation rose massively. So in 2020, we saw the number of households in Scotland living in temporary accommodation reached over 14,000. It's down a little bit on that now. It's about 13,000 households living in temporary accommodation. But it's anyone living in temporary accommodation is too many. These are families, they're children. These are people stuck in limbo with a bed and a roof, but they're left unable to move on with their lives. In some cases, trapped for long periods of time in temporary accommodation. In some cases, without access to cooking or laundry facilities. It's a traumatic experience, and it looked like during the pandemic the problem was getting worse. So official statistics released last year show the average time spent in temporary accommodation increased, rising from an average of 187 days up to 199 days in 2020-2021. And there was a report in the Scotsman shortly after that, which showed that 900 families had been waiting for at least 2 years for a permanent home in Scotland. So the number of people rough sleeping went down, but poverty, inadequate welfare support, a lack of joined-up services, and a shortage of affordable housing meant that the number of people in temporary accommodation went up. And that's the problem. That's not what we are now at Crisis really particularly concerned about. Scotland has some of the best protections in the world for people who lose their home, but around 8% of Scots has experienced homelessness. That's about 1 in 12 people. So as Ewan mentioned, the key really then is to look at how you can prevent homelessness. That's a big part of what we are working on at the moment, a big part of what we're campaigning on. And there are measures going through Parliament at the moment to address that. Before I go on, I suppose I should mention that, but when I talk about ending homelessness, I don't mean that no one will ever lose their home again. Ending homelessness to us means that through prevention, homelessness happens very, very rarely. When it does happen, it's very brief. And that once it happens to someone, it's then prevented from happening again. So temporary accommodation would be an emergency measure rather than some sort of default response of the system. So the main way to do that really is to help people get help earlier. So that's the big part of what we're campaigning for, is that people can get support if they are at risk of homelessness earlier, so they don't reach a point of crisis, so they can get a bit of help early rather than a lot of help later, and avoid a lot of trauma and a lot of money that would otherwise be spent on it. And just one last bit before I finish, I would just like to say, if anyone would like to volunteer for crisis, there are a lot of different roles available. We actually had a volunteer from this course. I think she's a couple of years ahead. She's just doing her dissertation at the moment. She volunteered with us for a couple of months over Christmas, helped us run all sorts of different events. She helped put together a film screening in Edinburgh. We showed Home Alone, if you're interested. We had a coffee morning, we had wellbeing days, we did fitness days, and it was Erin who helped us with that. She did a massive, massive part of that work. She was doing events and PR, I think, as her course. But we always encourage people with specialist skills in any of these areas just to get in touch and tell us. If you have a particular skill that you think can help us, then please let us know. There's other things you can do. You can join community fundraising groups. There's a great way to meet people, to learn more about homelessness, but also, most importantly, to help us try to end it. So thank you very much for having me along today, and I will stay around for the questions afterwards too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liam. What Liam's highlighted here is, I think, very important, the working together aspect, which you on-watchers can also participate in with volunteering, fundraising, checking out Crisis on their social media, checking out their website, as he mentioned, and Ewan mentioned before as well. Like the courses that you're doing at uni, you can apply those skills and things that you've learned definitely in these areas. And charities are a great place to work for, because it's just like the added value of doing something good for your own community. Again, thank you so much. And I'd like to again remind you guys of the Just Giving link that is posted all on our socials and should be posted on the YouTube live stream chat. Next up, our next speaker is Georgia Ramplin from Shelter Scotland. Shelter Scotland is an Edinburgh-born charity that is on a mission to end homelessness. Just pin Georgia.
Lovely, thanks very much. Hi everyone, thank you for joining, and thank you very much, Annie, for having us along. It's been really, I know I work for a homelessness charity, but it's really interesting hearing from all these wonderful charities and what we're all doing to support the cause. I am just going to try and share my screen to hopefully share a bit more information with you. Oh, hold on, I need to skip back through. Right, hopefully people can see a black screen now. Annie, can you give me a thumbs up just to make sure?
Yep, it's all clear.
Wonderful, great. So yeah, as Annie said, I'm Georgia. I'm a community fundraiser with Shelter Scotland. So absolutely, we are an Edinburgh-born organisation, but we now exist across the whole of Scotland. We also have Shelter existing in England as well, but obviously just because of legislation changes and all that sort of stuff, they are slightly separate in some ways. So I'm aware that sort of Ewan and Liam have given a very good snapshot of what homelessness looks like in Scotland at the moment. So rather than sort of going through the same information, I thought I would touch on the work that we do, but then focus on some of our successes that we've had recently in trying to make a difference. So the first thing just to touch on is obviously just the services that we provide. So the main things that people come to us for, we have an emergency helpline, we have an online chat service, and we have digital services as well. So the emergency helpline is essentially people calling us about any issue that they come across, whether that's housing or homelessness. And we've got housing advisors on the end of the phone that can give dedicated advice to them. The online chat is essentially like Facebook Messenger, so people can get in touch if they're less confident being on the phone with us. And the digital services, our website has, I think it's thousands of resources that people can actually use to be their own advocate. So we might provide templates for letters, we might provide advice, we might provide checklists, all those sorts of things that people can actually solve some of their own housing issues that they might be having. The second thing that we have is a law service across Scotland. So in Edinburgh, we have a dedicated team of solicitors, and we would provide a lawyer for people that might need to go to court. So in the case of, for example, an illegal eviction, so somebody is illegally evicted from their home, we might decide, with support obviously from the client, that we might decide to take that landlord to court. So in that situation, we would provide a lawyer totally free of charge. We would provide all of the advice and support totally free of charge to the client to make sure that they get the best result for them at the end of that situation. The third thing that we've had, which has had to change quite significantly over the past 2 years, is our Edinburgh Community Hub. So it used to be sort of a face-to-face drop-in centre for people that were struggling. So people could come to us and speak directly to a housing advisor, get support there and then on the day. Again, this has had to change quite a lot. So our hub is currently still closed, but we've been doing outreach work in the city and working alongside some of the wonderful organisations we've got here today. So we've been liaising with clients and offering support at things like food banks and drop-in centres, various different places across the city that we can support people. So the final thing that we do is campaigning. So I think it was Liam that mentioned this actually, but we were set up about 53 years ago. And we, I think at the time, thought, you know what, we'll set up a charity, we'll solve some of these issues we can see, and then we'll dissolve ourselves and we won't be needed anymore. We're still here 50 odd years later, but we are campaigning that one day homelessness will not exist. That is the dream, that is the aim, and it is definitely possible. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is definitely possible. So I'm just going to focus on 3 things that have happened sort of in my time whilst I've been at Shelter Scotland. The first one that I'd like to focus on is in January 2020, we declared a major victory. So we had a campaign against Glasgow City Council. So what had happened was, after I think by maybe 4 or 5 years of being supported by the Scottish housing regulator, Glasgow City Council was still failing to house people. So people were putting in an application that they were homeless and they still weren't being housed. And that's a legal duty by the council, and it just wasn't happening. So we kept challenging the council, we kept supporting people that needed our help, but we eventually decided that we were going to take them to court. It just wasn't good enough. They weren't fulfilling their legal duty. So we needed to do something about it. So after all that began in August 2019, and then we in November 2020, the report came out. I think it was about the 11th hour. It was a few minutes before we were due to take Glasgow City Council to court, and the Scottish housing regulator confirmed that Glasgow City Council definitely had failed. So then they would be working with them to try and improve their services. And ultimately that made sure that more people were housed, more people were getting that support that they needed in a really, really tough time. The second example to tell you about is a bit of a strange one to share with you, actually, because it is less of a win, as it didn't have a particularly good outcome for us, but it is a really good example of the type of injustices that we're standing up to. So Serco are a lock fitting and security company. So they were employed by councils across Scotland to force individuals and families from their homes after they've arrived in Scotland seeking asylum. So people were literally arriving back at the places where they were living, their flat or their house, to find that the locks had been changed and all of their belongings had been put outside. I mean, I can't even imagine what that would be like, heading home after work or heading home after being out and all of your stuff is outside. So our campaigns team and our advice teams, we worked alongside Positive Action on Housing to make sure that obviously any urgent advice was there for people that were affected. And we were calling on the Home Office and Serco to stop the lock changes. But we did have a couple of days in court and we weren't successful on that. But that is an example of the sort of injustice that we are up against. And the final example to share with you is definitely a success. So the photo you can see is Kirkcaldy Hospital. So what we were finding with this hospital is that their A&E department were recording large numbers of homeless people coming to the A&E department, not necessarily with any health issue, but obviously to find somewhere to sleep for the night. And the issue was that people were being given a bed and they were treated for obviously minor injuries and minor situations. But what would happen is the next morning they were just discharged, and actually the same process would happen over and over again. So it wasn't actually solving people's issues long term. So what we did was we worked with Fife Health and Social Care Partnership, and we employed 2 Shelter Scotland employees to work in the A&E department. So when this would happen, when people that were suffering from homelessness or poor housing were coming in, they were obviously treated in a medical sense, but then they were linked up with our housing advisors as well. So we could figure out, do you have somewhere to stay at the moment? What's the situation? What can we help with? So that actually that number of people that were coming into the hospital looking for support were finding the right support that they needed, and they were finding accommodation at the end of it. So that was a really, really exciting pilot that we took part in that had brilliant outcomes as well. So we are hopeful that that is something that could be rolled out to different hospitals across Scotland. And another thing to mention is, and again, Liam touched on this one. So currently in Edinburgh, we have over 2,000 households, which includes over 1,500 children being trapped in temporary accommodation. So we had a campaign a couple of years ago calling for the government to build more social homes. So with the local elections around the corner, we are relaunching a campaign. So we're just reminding leaders that they have that plan in place to build affordable housing, but in short, they need to get on with it. That's kind of the next step that needs to happen. So I will share the petition link with you afterwards in an email, because it is brand new. It is literally just launching on Monday. So hopefully, if you can add your name to that list, if you can add your name to that petition, we can make enough noise so that local leaders, they can hear how important that this issue is. And obviously, a couple of the other speakers have already mentioned ways that you can support, and the ways that you can support are endless. There's fundraising to get involved with, collecting stock for our charity shops that they can sell, getting involved with volunteering is a brilliant thing to do for your CV. The petition that has just come out, signing that literally takes about a minute and a half, if that. So that is a huge thing that you can do. And as Annie mentioned, sharing love on social media is definitely a huge way to show your support as well. So thank you very, very much for listening. I do hope it was helpful. I will just share my email address in case anyone's got any direct questions that they want to come to me about. But yes, thank you very much for having us, and I'll hand back to you, Annie.
Thank you, Georgia. 2 seconds. Yeah, it's really, really great presentation from Shelter Scotland. I really like how they highlight the point that we vote in these elected, like we elect people to care for the people, for us basically. And it's really great that there's charities like Shelter Scotland who remind them of these things and push them towards the things that they have promised to be doing for the community. And I think it's very important work. And again, if you would like to get involved with that, check out their social media, spread the love, check out their website and get volunteering. Thank you again, Georgia. And I'd like to again remind you guys that we have a Just Giving link posted on our socials that you can follow and donate, and we will be splitting the proceeds between the charities. Also, I am hearing that there's an issue with commenting on the YouTube. So if you go to our Instagram, Help Out Events, and just give us a DM with any questions that you have, and I will pass them on to our speakers. Thank you. And finally, we have our final speaker, Cindy Cosgrove from Social Bite, and I'll let her take over. Social Bite grew from a small cafe to a charity that makes a change every day. Thank you, Cindy. I'll let you take over now.
Thank you. I am going to also share my screen, so just bear with me a wee second. And you should be able to see. Perfect. Great. So thank you for inviting me along, as well as all these other wonderful charities that are here today. It's been, like Georgia said, just so nice to actually, even though we work in the same area. It's so nice to just hear from other people and hear reminders of what everyone is doing and how we're all working together. And at Social Bite, our partnership working is really kind of at the forefront of everything that we do. We really couldn't do what we do without the support of lots of other charities and groups like the people here today. So thank you. So I am the Community and Youth Fundraising Manager at Social Bite, and I've been at Social Bite for just over 6 months now. So about 6 months ago, I was kind of in lots of your positions, just trying to learn about what we do and how we support people across Scotland. So it's been a really exciting time to join Social Bite as well, because we're just about to kind of approach our 10-year anniversary as Social Bite and our first cafe, which is amazing because we've got lots of charities here that have been around a lot longer, you know, over 50 years, like Shelter Scotland. So we're just kind of the baby of the group, just still trying to do our bit and work with other people to end homelessness in Scotland. So I'll tell you a little bit about our story, because it is maybe a little bit more unique. Social Bite started back in 2012, and it started as a coffee shop on Rose Street in Edinburgh. So hopefully you guys will be familiar with Rose Street. I'm sure you will. And that's where our first coffee shop was, and where we still have one today as well. So it's really exciting to still see that in place in Edinburgh. And it was founded by Josh Littlejohn and Dr. Alice Thompson. And it began as a small social business cafe in Edinburgh. And when Josh and Alice first opened Social Bite, the intention was that it would be a social enterprise, and that the profits that they raised from that cafe would go to good causes, and not necessarily in Scotland either. It was just to kind of put those proceeds to good causes and good work. But quite soon after opening, they realised that actually they could maybe do something a little bit closer to home. They met a young homeless man named Pete, and Pete was outside the Rose Street Cafe, and he sold the Big Issue. And one day Pete plucked up the courage to ask Josh and Alice if he could have a job. And Josh and Alice said, well, yeah, why not? Couldn't see any reason why not. So they employed Pete, and Pete began working in the Rose Street Cafe. And after a little while, Pete had a brother who also needed a job, and they ended up employing his brother and lots of other people from a homeless background, which was really lovely to just see this whole thing kind of evolve on its own. And it certainly wasn't the intention that homelessness started to become the thing that Social Bite was known for. So seeing what a difference that made to individuals' lives, they really wanted to do more to help. And they began, you know, with the cafe offering free food and obviously the jobs and to people that are affected by homelessness. And ever since then, we've been continuing our charitable work and campaigning on the homelessness issue. Some people might remember we made headlines when George Clooney visited the cafe in Edinburgh in 2015. I was really sad that I wasn't working at Social Bite at that time, because people still talk about the absolute buzz on Rose Street that day. And we've had people like Leonardo DiCaprio and Harry and Meghan and the Duchess of Cambridge. So we have been really excited to see lots of kind of support in the wider kind of celebrity world as well for what we do at Social Bite. So there's a little picture of Pete that I mentioned right at the beginning, and Josh, and then obviously a picture of George Clooney as well. So what is our mission at Social Bite? Like everybody that's kind of joined us on the call, our mission is to end homelessness, and our vision is that everybody has a safe place to call home. We want to help people, and we do help people to break that cycle of homelessness. And our projects that we do have are informed by our belief into building relationships, and that we also believe that food and homes and jobs and all that support are keys to enable everybody to reach their potential. And that's really what we want everybody to have the opportunity of doing. At Social Bite, obviously we started with employing Pete and several others, and our ongoing aim is that 1 in 4 of our team have a background of homelessness as well. So as you can imagine, we had the cafes, and then we started thinking, well, how do we continue on this mission? How do we raise funds, and how do we continue to support people that need us? And one of those things that we did right in the beginning was what we call our sleep outs. Some of you may be familiar and have maybe heard about what our sleep out events were. But basically in 2016, we organised our first mass participation fundraising sleep out in Edinburgh. And then it was basically people sleeping out in Princess Street Gardens. It was cold, it was in the winter, but we had a huge amount of people join us on that first sleep out event. And because it was so successful, by 2018, we had over 18,000 people taking part in cities across Scotland. So there were sleep outs in Glasgow, as well as other cities as well. And people were sleeping out in solidarity with those people that were affected by homelessness, and raising over £8 million for a range of projects that were designed to break the cycle of homelessness. In 2019, Josh, our co-founder, has a real vision for really building on what we've done in previous years and trying to make an even bigger impact every year. And so we went global with our work, and the world's biggest sleep out was launched, and that we partnered with the world's biggest sleep out, and we staged sleep out events in 52 cities. So there was a sleep out in Trafalgar Square in London, Times Square in New York, in Madrid, in Mumbai, which is absolutely incredible to see. And you can see picture there, Josh, with Will Smith, which is pretty incredible, back in 2019, and to have people like Dame Helen Mirren join us as well. So it really kind of put, again, Social Bite on the map, and the issue of homelessness in Scotland and across the world, really at the forefront of people's minds as well. So to talk about kind of what we do today, we started with a Rose Street cafe, and we now have expanded that to we have one in Aberdeen. We've got a sandwich shop in Glasgow. We're kind of in the process of changing premises at the moment, but we're very much have a presence in Glasgow still. And really, really exciting, as of Tuesday next week, we are opening a coffee shop in London. So the team are in London today, kind of doing a little bit of a launch project on that. So we've kind of started branching out of Scotland. Scotland is still very much the forefront of our minds, and it's Edinburgh, and it's the home of Social Bite. But we realise some of the projects that we deliver here in Scotland, we can start to deliver elsewhere in the UK as well. So a third of our employees and our volunteers have also been affected by homelessness, and all the profits from those cafes, our restaurant in Edinburgh, and any corporate catering and our brownies go to our kind of mission and Social Bite Fund in breaking that cycle of homelessness. Here's a little picture of the guys at Rose Street, and to kind of talk about kind of how our coffee shops play a role in supporting people in the local community. So in a typical year, we give out over 140,000 items of food and drink, connect 550 vulnerable people each week with meals and support and opportunities. So like on a Monday and a Friday afternoon in Glasgow, somebody can pop in and get a hot meal. They can sit, they can chat, they can build relationships with other people, get to know our team, get to know each other, and just have that safe environment and enjoy a nice hot meal. We also open our shops on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, which for people in a situation of homelessness and food poverty, it's just a lovely opportunity to have them all come together and enjoy and get a part of that festive meal and company on a day where they maybe wouldn't have had that opportunity. And we also run a campaign and fund thousands of festive meals. You may have seen It Is On. We do a thing through It Is On each year, and in December there we had over 100,000 people bought £5 meal vouchers that we will use for our free food provision for the remainder of the year. So to have 100,000 vouchers sold is absolutely incredible in just kind of over 3 weeks in December. So you can see that our free food is really a way that we engage our people to build relationships. We want to provide a social environment. We want it to be warm and friendly and relaxed atmosphere, and just offer somebody a nutritious meal and a listening ear as well. Because you can see that obviously our cafes play such a huge role in our free food provision. You can imagine that when COVID-19 struck in March 2 years ago, that it was a bit of a, well, what do we do? How do we ensure that these people that still need us get the food that they need? So on the 20th of March 2020, the kitchens and the cafes teams were really started to repurpose what we did and started to provide free lunch bags for people experiencing homelessness and food poverty due to the pandemic. So we scaled up to meet demand, and we had an amazing network of 99 charity partners and groups, and connected them with individuals and families and all those at-risk communities as well. So in under a year, we provided over 1 million free food packs and meals and essential items just to help people who really needed it the most through that crisis. One of the things that we also do at Social Bite is our Jobs First programme. And this was kind of born out of the success of our Social Bite Academy as well. So our Jobs First programme looks to work with employers and provide real job opportunities to those that have experienced homelessness. The real crucial part of this programme is that it's trauma informed, and people will get that individual support as part of their employment as well. Employment can, on the face of it, really appear like an opportunity that's available to everybody, but there are lots of factors that come into play for somebody to gain employment and to remain in employment. And many of the people that we work with have had to overcome some really difficult circumstances. And it might be that things like education and gaining any type of qualification have really had to be sacrificed in order for them to continue to kind of getting through life. So that we know that unemployment is disproportionately higher for people who are currently homeless, with just 6 in 100 people, compared to the general population of 70 in 100. So we know that homelessness is an issue for people trying to gain employment. And so through our Jobs First programme, we work with the employee and we work with the employer to provide those job opportunities to those who have experienced homelessness. And it's not just about getting someone a job, it's actually about supporting them once they get that job too. It's one thing getting them the job, but they still need that support to remain in that job and to still get the best out of that opportunity. So the Jobs First programme is really centred around trust, and the support is really led by the individual as well. Everybody has a different pathway, and it's really important that we respect and get to know that individual and what they want to do and the path that they want to choose. So we provide training to the employer and ensure that they have the necessary knowledge and skills as well to support the employee. So it's a really exciting one, and with the new coffee shop opening in London, Jobs First is something that we're looking to really roll out down in London as well. Other thing would be our Social Bite Village, which was touched on kind of right at the beginning. So the Social Bite Village is based in Granton in Edinburgh, and it was built in 2018. And the objective of the Social Bite Village was to create a solution that would break the cycle of homelessness and provide an alternative to the reliance on unsupported shared temporary accommodation. Some of the places that people are temporarily placed in are really just not fit for purpose. And the village is an opportunity for people to have a safe place to call home. It's a stable place, dignified, and it's a caring place that people can come to live for, 12 to 18 months. Some people stay a little bit longer. Some people will spend a lot less time there as well, just depending on their individual circumstances. But it's a really community-led environment, and it is kind of run by Cyrenians as well. So although we built the village, Cyrenians really manage that opportunities with people on a day-to-day basis. It's made up of 10 nest houses, some of which you can see there in the photo, and each nest house has 2 residents within it. And then there's also an additional unit for staff as well. So within these houses, they've both got their own individual rooms. They've got a wee shared living room and a shared kitchen. So they can cook in their own house if they want, but we've also got a community hub as well. So people can choose to cook in their own home if they're just not feeling up for socialising, which is fair enough, or they can go and use that central community hub and cook meals with other people, or just be in that more social environment, learn to cook, eat, socialise together, and also use that community hub for training and things as well. So this was in 2018, and sorry, there's somebody beeping really loudly outside my window. In 2018, we built that village, but because of the success of it, we really want to grow our Social Bite village as well. So we decided last year to do our Break the Cycle campaign, which was a 60-mile cycle from the Sir Chris Hoy Velodrome in Glasgow and ended at the Social Bite Village in Granton in Edinburgh. And the whole premise of that fundraising event was to encourage people to raise a goal of £1 million to build 2 new Social Bite villages in 2 new cities in the UK. And we've had different kind of thoughts on where those locations were. So kind of maybe looking at Glasgow or Dundee, perhaps London, and making sure that wherever that village goes in, making sure that it's the right location and we're building it for the right reasons and supporting individuals. So it's a huge, we ended up raising over 700,000. It was one of the few mass participation events that actually took place in 2021. We were really lucky, just the timing. It was early September, so it was kind of like we'd kind of gone back into a lockdown and then we started coming out of it as we launched, and things then, were very up and down, but because it was an outdoor event and we were able to do lots of social distancing, it was really safe, and we were able to have lots of people take part, which was amazing. And due to the success of the 21 event, we are bringing it back in 2022. So if anyone is a keen cyclist or wants to get on their bike between now and September, it's a really easy way to join us on our mission to ending homelessness. I just very quickly touch on one last thing that we do is our Festival of Kindness, which is our campaign generally around the end of November and throughout December up until Christmas time. With our Festival of Kindness, we launched that in 2020 for the first time, where we had Christmas trees in St Andrew's Square in Edinburgh and one on Vinicum Street in Glasgow. And these big, huge Christmas trees acted as a kind of central donation point for people that wanted to drop off gifts that were on our wish list. And those gifts would be donated to our charity partners and given to those people who really needed them at that time of year. So we didn't just make up a list, we spoke with our community partners and asked them the types of things that people might need. So we had the 2 Christmas trees in 2020, and in 2021 we grew Festival of Kindness and we had Christmas trees in 5 cities across the UK. So we had Edinburgh and Glasgow again, then we had one in Dundee, one in Edinburgh, and also one in London. And the tree that we had in London is actually right across the street from where that new coffee shop is just about to open next week. So these trees were a real opportunity for people to give something physical or to come along and donate through our Tap to Donate machines. And the campaign was absolutely incredible. In 2020, we had over 10,000 gifts donated just across those trees. And if you think about what restrictions were like in 2020 Christmas time, they were very restrictive, especially in Glasgow, when we weren't allowed to very much leave a couple of mile radius. So it was amazing to see the support that the local communities gave us. And we will look to be doing Festival of Kindness in 2022 as well. These campaigns and everything that we do really wouldn't, be it wouldn't be what it is without the support of all of our fantastic supporters. Our volunteers are a huge part of what we do. We have an incredible social impact team that deliver our services and work with our community partners. And so people like you guys putting on events, and those of you that have joined us to listen to all of the charities today, it's really, we couldn't do what we do without all of these types of things. So thank you for having me, and hopefully that gave you a good insight into the work of Social Bite.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Some really great projects there, some really great things you could also get involved with. And I really liked how Cindy highlighted, and all the other charities as well, the importance of community and how important that is for a human being. It's what makes us us, and it's important that there's charities that concentrate on that specifically. Follow Social Bite on all of their social medias, check out their website, and also remember that there's a Just Giving link that through which you can donate, and we will be giving the proceeds to these charities involved. Thank you to all of our speakers today. These were some really great points raised, some really great presentations, some really great work that all these charities are doing. And I would like to move on to the Q&A section. I have some questions come in here from the people who are watching at home or wherever they are. But yeah, we'll explain again that if you want to answer the question or you have an answer, just put the emoticon on that so raised hand basically, and then you can lower your hand after. There's a question here, I think for you and more like, he has left unfortunately, but he did mention hostels. Is that usual practice, and how does that work? Do people just turn up at a hostel and then ask for housing, or how do the charities kind of work through that process? Yes, Leo, sorry, I'll unmute you. Yeah, there you go.
Is Ewan still here? Because I think he would be better placed to answer.
No, he has left. Yeah. So if anyone would. Yeah.
So what we saw at the start of the pandemic was a move towards what we call welcome centres, which is a building in Edinburgh. It's based out near Haymarket, where someone can go and get urgent support. So part of that is run by Edinburgh City Council, and then the other part of it is run by one of our partners, the Bethany Christian Trust. So Scotland moved away from what would previously been called communal night shelters a few years ago, with the aim of moving towards what we call rapid rehousing transition plans, which is the idea that someone should be quickly moved into better accommodation. So that's one of the policy differences between Scotland and England, is the use of night shelters, because Scotland was one of the first nations in the UK to release a plan to, it was the first nation in the UK to release a plan to end homelessness, and that was one of the measures contained within it.
Thank you. That's a great answer. I hope whoever asked it, you feel that it's answered. The next question here is, why did the presenters decide to make this their career? How did you get here, or why did you get here working for a charity, homelessness charity in particular? Georgia?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that one. I'm not sure whether Liam and Cindy would have a similar answer, but I did quite a bit of volunteering at school, and then continued to do volunteering at university. So it kind of seemed quite an obvious choice for me to try and get into a third sector, like charitable organisation somehow. Liam's clapping, so I'm thinking maybe kind of similar for him as well. But yeah, I think for homelessness for me, so I used to work for a terminal illness charity, and obviously all charities do amazing work, sort of like whatever the cause. But I was definitely very aware of the situation of homelessness before working for Shelter Scotland. I think it was just really good timing that I saw a job come up in for this cause. Like for me, I think it's really important for me to feel very passionate about the thing that I'm fundraising for and the thing that I'm supporting. So I would really, really recommend it to anyone that's maybe feeling a bit unsure of what you want to do after university or what sector you want to go into. I mean, it's definitely sort of a very rewarding and like fulfilling type of role that you can be in with a charity.
Thank you, Georgia. Our next, unless anyone else, Liam wants to talk, right? Yeah.
I was clapping. I had actually meant to hit the raise hand button, but here we are. I mean, my route was in a bit different actually. A lot of it is quite similar to what Georgia said, except I was a political journalist for about 9 years before I came to work for Crisis. So this is the first time I've ever worked for an organisation like this. And the thing that pushed me into it actually was writing largely investigative work into social justice issues, particularly immigration. And I encountered all the organisations here that way. So it was through the strength of the reputation of the sector that I came to work for Crisis in particular, but for any of the organisations here would have been an option, I think, because when you start to look at the experiences of people who are going through the homelessness system, and particularly people who are shut out from a lot of the support that they would be able to access if they were British citizens. That was what motivated me, was this kind of sense of injustice. And it felt like maybe I could help with that in a way.
Thank you, Liam. Great answer. The next question here is, I think, more for Social Bite. People are interested in how did you reach all the celebrities that appeared in your presentation?
That's a really good question. I think it's really largely down to Josh, our co-founder. Josh is really ambitious in what he wants to achieve, and we're really lucky that we have our co-founder still kind of at the heart of like what we do every day. A lot of charities that are older probably don't have an opportunity to talk to the person that actually started their charity. So Josh really just had a bit of a list of like, it'd be really cool if we got this person to do it, and kind of just uses his own kind of opportunities and tries to take them. So we have been really lucky for people like Leonardo DiCaprio and George Clooney, with Sir Chris Hoy really fronting our Break the Cycle campaign, and hopefully will again later this year. And I would kind of just say watch the space on potentially who else might join us. I've obviously mentioned our coffee shop launching in London next week, so there may or may not be some familiar faces to launch that. So really, I think it's using Josh and his network and his ambitions of really putting the issue of homelessness at the forefront of everyone's mind, and his mission to end homelessness and to make it collaborative. And he really just wants to try and kind of make that issue as big as possible, and put celebrities kind of there as well to help raise with their profile.
Thank you, Cindy. Here you have it, guys. Leonardo DiCaprio is an email away from you if you get involved with Social Bite. Another question here is, I'll just unpin Cindy there. Increasing social housing stock takes time. How can this be speeded up to be addressed let me try that again. Increasing social housing stock takes time. How can this be speeded up to address the current problem in Scotland? Sorry.
Yeah, happy to try and answer this one.
Thank you.
Potentially don't know how to fully answer the whole question, but I suppose just a bit of context. We campaigned about 18 months ago. We'd done some research, and we basically told the government how many social homes needed to be built to obviously sort out the homelessness issue that we have, and to try and get more people into a secure home. And the really good news is that the Scottish Government have committed to even more than we suggested to them. So I suppose like part one of the process is done, which is great that they've committed to that number of social homes. The part that is trickier and that we need to try and see through is to do with this new campaign that we've launched, that almost tries to push that commitment over the line so that we actually see those houses being built. It's all very well and good them saying, oh yeah, we'll do it, but they actually have to build the houses. So that is sort of the next thing that we'll be pushing in the local elections that are coming up. So I suppose to answer the question of how can you speed up that process, I don't fully know how you can speed up that process, because you're absolutely right, it does take a really long time. But I would say that we're in a really good position. The fact that the government have committed to more than what we asked them to is really, really encouraging. So hopefully that feeds through and actually happens.
Thank you, Georgia. Yeah, very good answer. Again, Shelter Scotland does a lot of lobbying in the government, which is great work. Again, it can speed up the processes, and probably part of it could, I would guess, would be the involvement from the communities also. If you raise more awareness of this issue, maybe that will hopefully speed up the process. There's another question here. What are the biggest challenges your charities are facing this year? There's probably many. Hands should be flying up. Liam, yeah.
Probably our biggest concern at the moment is the economic impact of the pandemic taking effect. We're likely to see a huge rise in the cost of living with energy bills going up. Inflation is forecast to rise. Wages are quite possibly going to get squeezed. I mean, no one really knows what economic impact lockdown and the pandemic is going to have at the moment, but it's likely to, it is like we're deeply concerned it's going to cause a huge rise in homelessness in Scotland. We commissioned some research late last year from Heriot-Watt University, just a research centre on homelessness. Really, they're kind of experts on this. They spoke to every local authority in Scotland, and they spoke to 29 out of 32 local authorities in Scotland, and of those 29, every single one said that they expect to see a rise in homelessness. So our concern really is taking the momentum that we saw over the pandemic, the way that people came together and took urgent action, and applying that to the future and saying, listen, we can't stop now. We have to keep going. We have to offer support to people to help them keep their homes. And part of that is through prevention. Part of that is helping them get help earlier, and for public services to ask people about their housing situation and to offer help if they need it. So I think it's more about the uncertainty of what's going to come and how we can mitigate the economic impacts. That's probably our biggest concern at the moment, I would say.
Thank you, Liam. I think Georgia wants to answer this one as well.
Yeah, just wanted to absolutely second everything that Liam has said. I suppose something that every charity is facing is a loss of income following the pandemic, that so many events had to be cancelled, so many wonderful people that were going to do something fundraising-y for us weren't able to do it, or it changed as being, an online version, all that kind of stuff, but there has been a real significant drop in income for so many charities. So that is something that I think all of us are slightly worried about, but are also trying to, be very creative and mitigate some of that to try and sort of make up for that lost time over the past 2 years. So yeah, just a shameless plug for the Just Giving page, really. If you can spare a £5, it really will make a difference to all the charities. So yeah, just doing my fundraiser bit there.
Thank you, Georgia. Yeah, definitely. Again, follow the Just Giving link and donate to us, and we will split the money accordingly. Any other time, please go to all of these charities. There are ways in which you can donate and help these people. Okay, unless anyone, sorry, I've just asked Georgia to unmute by accident. Unless anyone within the meeting room has a question, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, for everyone for being so responsive to our emails and so excited to join and sharing really great stories and really inspiring stories, if I might add. Definitely moving, and definitely we all have a lot of respect for the work that you guys are doing, and we hope that all of your goals, your collective goal of stopping homelessness in Scotland, is going to become a reality, and as soon as, because it is really important. So yeah, yeah, hearts in the chat. Yeah, thank you so much, and then I'd ask Ross to probably end the stream. Thank you, guys. Have a good rest of your day and good luck with your work. And again, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks very much, Annie. See you later.
Bye.